Cheers, everybody.
Hey, we're back.
We're back after a 2-month hiatus. It's been 2 months, right?
Too long.
It's been too long. We got Graham and Alex here, Smarty Pints coming at you, Brew and Grow, Rockford, Illinois. So tell me, Alex, we have a lot of goodies on the table here. I am really curious as to what we're talking about.
Yeah, I thought today we could talk about milling your grain. For those of you that are doing all grain brewing and or just specialty grains for extract brewing, you usually have to crush your grain. Not usually, you do have to crush your grain. Why is that, Graham? Why don't we just put the whole
We're going into all
right
grain brewing techniques here, and partial mashing as well sometimes. You got to crush your grains. And what you're doing is you're extracting all the goodness from the grains. You're extracting the enzymes, the starches, what you need to have converted in order to make your wort, which will then get you your beer.
Right. And all that stuff is in the center of the kernel of the barley, so you want to crack it open so you can get to the goodness.
Yeah. And in front of us we've got a variety of grains, everything from your base malt to specialty.
Yeah, some rye and wheat, and then flaked barley and a torrefied wheat. The reason I have all these out here is because, well, this is just a standard 2-row. I don't know if you can see that. This is what probably 80 to 90, sometimes 100% if you're doing a smash of percent of your grain bill is just going to be a 2-row barley. This is obviously, because it is such a high percentage of the beer, it's probably the most important part of your grain bill to the beer. So this is what you're going to be most concerned about when you're cracking your grain open. Ideally, you want each kernel in about 2 or 3 pieces, but, and this is a big but, you want to do it, you want to do it while leaving the husk as intact as possible. Because all the husks that are covering that grain, they're going to form a natural filter bed in your mash and help pull particles out while you're recirculating, so your runnings are going to be nice and clear and leave all that material behind in your mash tun, because if there's husk material that makes its way into your kettle, it's going to go above 180 degrees, start pulling out tannins, astringencies.
Bad news bears for everybody.
A caveat to that is if you're doing a extract batch with just specialty grains, you don't have to really worry about leaving the husk intact, because you're just pulling out flavor, color, things like that. Yeah.
So you're steeping them, basically. Think of like making a tea with a tea bag. You're just going to steep them at a certain temperature. Tea bag. So, anyways, back to the point. Specialty grains, you don't have to worry so much about crushing or anything, because you're just extracting the flavor and the color, like Alex said. On the other side, you have such things as wheat and rye.
Yeah, so what is different between the wheat and the rye from the barley?
Well, they got different flavors for one thing. Also, you can't use as much in your mash.
That's true.
Because these thicken up the mash. So why don't you go ahead and refresh my memory as to the difference? I mean,
well, the main difference, what I was getting at for today's talk,
the husk size.
Exactly. There is no husk. If you look at the wheat and the rye, no husk. So what does that mean? That means you can crush them much, much finer than you do the barleys.
So go to town.
Yep. The finer the crush, the more of that the goodness that's going to be exposed to the liquid in your mash tun. So the more conversion, better efficiencies.
Which then explains why it could lead to a stuck sparge or
Exactly.
mash.
Yeah. This stuff turns very gelatinous in your mash, so it can clog all the runnings.
Think of a bunch of goop sticking together because no husk is there, which then goes into rice hulls. You got a nice zoom in on there. Rice hulls are your friend when you're doing rye beers or wheat beers. And the reason for that is you're basically throwing in a husk. That's basically all it is. It's making your own husks in the beer. Since it didn't have any, you're putting them in.
Yeah, and also very important to note, it's just the hulls of the rice. So there's not going to be any flavor imparted. You're not going to be getting any gravity points from this, no starches converted to sugars or anything like that. It's purely a physical media for filtration. That's it.
Now there's one person that I know of, I've seen comments on the Homebrew Network, is Big Cat Fernandez says he uses 1 pound per pound of rice hulls per 10 pounds of grain.
Okay.
So that's what he claims. If I'm wrong, Big Cat, and correct me, but I could have sworn I've seen you say that. Do you have any input on that?
I generally do a pound per 5 gallons.
Per 5 gallons.
Which is probably about equivalent because you think 10 gallons or 10 pounds for a 5-gallon batch.
Yeah.
So it sounds about right.
Good rule of thumb. So then over here we've got some other kinds of goodies. Flaked barley and torrefied wheat.
So why are these up here?
These are up here because they say on here, they'll either say mash ready or does not require milling. So you can just throw these into your mash.
Yeah, exactly. No need to crush them up. All the goodness is already right there and exposed. Cool thing about the torrefied wheat, I don't know if you can zoom up on here, Julie. I like to think of torrefied wheat kind of as like a popcorn. Like imagine regular wheat is the unpopped kernel, and then the torrefied wheat is what you get after you toss some popcorn in the microwave for a few minutes. So all of this stuff, it's been pre-gelatinized and it goes right into suspension in your mash. No need to grind it up.
Sounds good. All right, so to follow us up, we're going to go over basic milling techniques.
Yeah, exactly. We'll toss some of this 2-row through the mill, and then we'll get you a picture of what it should look like. How fine of a crush, how much should be big pieces, little pieces, how much of the husk should be left behind. And yeah, just get you another point of reference.
There you go.
Here we have a typical malt mill. This one is what's called a heavy-duty malt mill because it has these cool gears. So as you're turning the one, the gear drives the opposite one, and those in turn move these rollers in here. Can you see those? And you'll notice there's a little gap in there, and that is going to determine how fine or coarse the crush of your grain is. Some mills just come with one setting. That's just a standard factory setting, which works well for a typical crush, and I would trust that. Even the ones that are adjustable like this one usually come with a factory setting that they recommend, which I would go with. There are some cool instruments that you can get to put in between those rollers to get the exact dimensions and I guess the thickness, the width of that gap, so you can reference that and really quantify it. But for me, I just go by really looking at how the grains are coming through. Also, yeah, let me show you how to adjust it. I have this little pin here to loosen, to free this little knob here, and then you turn it in or out, and that in turn pulls those rollers apart or pushes them together. Alright, so what we're going to do is pour some of this 2-row right into the little hopper here, and then we're going to start crushing. And as you can see here, this is manual. It has a hand crank, but what you can do at home if you want is remove this and put on a power drill and let that do the work for you instead of your arm. If you do that, I would, as tempting as it is, I would refrain from just pulling the hammer back and have it fly through there, because if you're spinning it at a really high rate, what you're going to be doing is throwing that grain through those rollers and basically shredding your husk material apart. Remember, we want to keep that husk material intact. So much so that some people, like Chris, he'll actually moisten his grain before he mills it. What that does is it softens up the husk material, makes it a little more pliable, so it's more likely to bend instead of shred as it's going through the roll.
And if you want more info on that, you can just simply Google husk conditioning or grain conditioning. Mm-hmm. And on the Homebrew Network, it's a popular subject that they're talking about lately too.
Oh, cool. So I guess it's a timely video.
It is a timely video.
All right, great. Well, let's crush these suckers. And so you're basically just rolling it. That's it.
There it goes.
All right, wasn't that fun?
It was very fun.
So what do we have?
We have some crushed grains.
So, as you can see, there's a lot of fine particles, a lot of pretty big particles, and a lot of that husk material is pretty intact. It's not too shredded, so that should form a relatively good filter bed. Remember, you don't want to pulverize this. You don't want to turn it all to flour. You want to keep that husk material intact.
If you create too much flour, what will happen is you'll more than likely get a stuck sparge or stuck mash. Just because it'll compact all the way down. And you won't have a filter for it. Oh! Okay. Well, on that note, I think that just about wraps up that video of types of greens, what to look out for crushing, and a good pace for crushing.
Yeah.
So cheers.
Prost.
Catch you in another episode.